Okay, before we go on, we already dragged the comp into the comps folder, but we also need to drag this time-lapse JPEG into the graphics folder just to kind of clean this up. Oh, my computer's slow. So there you see the two things that it automatically made for us, the composition and bringing in the file, we have in two separate folders, which is what we want. Your screen should look like mine. It automatically loaded the time-lapse 001 JPEG down here in our timeline, which is this whole big thing. And remember, this timeline is a little unique because of two reasons. So basically, creating a motion graphic in After Effects, it basically is an animated graphic design. So it can incorporate graphics, photographs, vector logos, video clips, text, and each and every one of them can be animated separately to help convey an overall image. After Effects has been around since 1993, so it's been around for a long time, 27 years. It's the industry standard application for creating motion graphics, largely due to its tight integration with Photoshop and Illustrator. So working with layers in After Effects, they can be still images, they can be video, vector graphics, and text. A layer can be imported from somewhere else, so you could make it in Photoshop or Illustrator and bring it into After Effects. Or if you don't have that software and you only work in After Effects, you can create them natively in After Effects. You don't need those other two pieces of software. So just like Photoshop and Illustrator, layers have stacking order. And this is, think of this as your layers window right here. So whatever's on top is covering up what's below it, unless there's transparency involved. But not only does it have stacking order, it also has duration. So when does this show up? Do I see this layer right when the video starts? Or do I see it 1 second into it? Is this the starting point where this layer shows up and does something and then it goes away 2 seconds later? So each layer has its own duration, and the compositions don't have to have the same duration. One can show up for 3 seconds and then another and then another. All right, before we do the next step in the book, if your composition window looks like mine and you really can't tell it's too big, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to go to the zoom here. I'm at 72. I'm going to back up to 50%. What this shows me is that this is the viewport that we're working with now, the 1920 by 1080. That's the size of our movie. But the still images that we took are actually bigger. They go in this dotted area. So it's a bigger picture. Only the part showing through the window is what we're seeing right now. So one thing that we can do is that we can use the selection tool, and we can click on this so we can see the boundaries, and we can actually move it around within our viewport. So one way that we're going to show animation is we're going to pretend that this image is on a dolly or something, I don't know what they're called, but we're going to pan up and down. So the width isn't going to change, but we are going to show different parts of this flip book over time by changing the vertical height. After you've played around with this, if you hold down Command and Shift while you're playing around here, there we go, we can get it back to center. So make sure that it's centered horizontally and vertically, or close to that point. All right, let's go down to the timeline and specifically to the layer area right here. And we see the time-lapse 001 JPEG, and there is a disclosure triangle right here, so we're going to twirl that open. And we're going to see that the only option we have with this is transform. We're also going to twirl that open. This is going to show us oh, and your playhead should be at the starting point. If it isn't, make sure you grab your playhead and get it to the first frame. So at this exact point, this is important, wherever your playhead is, that's what these numbers are going to reference. So at playhead point 0, before frame 1 starts, the anchor point is at these X and Y coordinates in the positioning, and we're at 100% scale. There's no rotation, and we're at 100% opacity. So this is our starting point, and to animate we need to use keyframes. So to better understand how keyframes work, think back to early days of Disney, for example, with hand-drawn animations. So the term keyframe refers to a single frame or drawing that illustrates the key points in an animation. So picture Mickey Mouse walking in from the left, Minnie walking in from the right. They high five, turn around, and go away. The key points would be where they start, where they end, where they high five, where they turn, and where they end again. And that's something that the senior animator would do. One person, believe it or not, did not draw every frame of those amazing Disney movies that we all love. The junior animators got the job of doing the in-betweens, which is where the word tweening comes from. So if the senior editor had Mickey Mouse over here and said Mickey's got to get here by 2 seconds into this animation, senior animator would draw Mickey here, draw a frame with Mickey here, and the junior animator had to figure out everything in between and draw that. So the cool thing about software is that it's going to do it for us. It's actually going to create all of these tweens based on where we tell it to start and stop. So every time we put down a keyframe and give it another detail here, maybe we say, this is just a simple example, but at 4 seconds, we want it to go down to 0% opacity. So if we moved our playhead here, change the opacity to 0, it would make a keyframe at that point. And from here to here, it would go from 100% opacity down to 0 when it hit this point. And then if we pulled out our playhead timeline and at 8 seconds, we've made another keyframe back up at 100%. From 4 to 8 second point, it would figure out how to get it from 0% opacity back up to 100 over this stretch of time. It's going to do all the work for us. So a keyframe refers to a fixed property value at a given moment of time. So at this given moment of time, these are the fixed values of this JPEG. To create the first start of your animation or the first keyframe, you have to activate these stopwatches that are to the left. When they're open like this, they haven't been activated. But when you click on them, they'll light up and that will put down a keyframe exactly where your playhead is. So this is not going to be real intuitive at first, but I promise it will get intuitive the more you do it. So the simplest way of looking at this is that to begin animating something, you have your timeline where you want it, and you click a stopwatch of what you want to change. So this is the starting position, so I'm going to lock down position, for example, but then over here I'm going to change it. So let's do this. All right, what we're first going to do is have our playhead at the beginning, and we are going to change our positioning. So we're going to start by selecting the second position value, the one that says 540, and we're going to change it to 330, and we're going to hit return or enter. Notice how that shifted up. We have way more, there we go. We have way more space available at the top. It locked our bounding box to be down here. So at this starting point, our position is now at 330. All right. To set it to begin this way, to have these numbers be activated, we need to go to the left here and click on this stopwatch. So there we go. I clicked. It turned blue. I see a keyframe, which is a blue diamond, and I now see, instead of just a cursor, I see a blue diamond, and that says that at this moment in time, this is where it's going to be positioned. Now, if we never made another keyframe, nothing would change. It would stay at that position all the time. But once we give it a second point and it knows, oh crap, by the time we get to the 8 second mark, I have to be totally at the bottom here. I have to make this picture go down. Once we set that keyframe, it will do the animating all in between here for us. So we're going to go to the end of the timeline. So Command Option right arrow will jump us to the end of our timeline. And at this point, actually I believe our timeline goes beyond this. I'm going to scrub back a little bit. Here's where our clips actually end, is at the 8-second point. So I'm going to go to the end of that at the 8-second point. And when my playhead reaches here, the position that I want it to be at is not 960-330 like it was. I want it to be 960-750. And I'm going to hit, so I'm going to change that second number to be 750, and I'm going to hit enter. Notice that made another keyframe here. So what it knows is that it has to change from here to here. It has to go from being at the bottom of the viewport to the top of the viewport. Let's go to the beginning of the timeline. So Command Option left arrow will pull us back to that. And you can see that we have something different showing up here. It's kind of showing some movement. Whenever you animate a file in After Effects, you want to preview your work to make sure it works the way you intended. In most cases, what you apply in After Effects will not instantly play back in real time unless you render it first. So we've been lucky. In Premiere, we've been able to see things live. We haven't had to render out until just last chapter we did the rendering. So we want to do a RAM preview of this. So it uses the RAM on our computer to show it. That's why it's called a RAM preview. So a couple of ways of activating a RAM preview in After Effects. You can either press the 0 key on your numeric keypad, but that has to be the one off to the far right that's like a calculator. If you don't have that, it's not going to work. You can press Control 0, or you can go up to our preview panel, which is up here. Remember this thing? And we can push on the RAM preview button up in here. So I think keyboard shortcuts tend to work best for us. So we're going to do a RAM preview of this. And because I have the numeric keypad, I just pushed 0. And it worked quite well. So do you see it's kind of slow and choppy, but do you see how it appears that the camera is panning up? We're moving from a fixed position upward. So once it gets through that, there we go. Now it's much faster, now that it's rendered all the way through. That's what you should see. So once you've done that, you can stop your RAM preview. I just push my spacebar, and we're going to do a save. We have to save this in After Effects. Whenever you see the little star behind your file name in any program, that means that there have been changes since you last saved. So we're going to want to save this. So Command S or a file save, saves it in After Effects. Now we're going to jump back into Premiere, and because this is a linked composition, it's going to be updated and fixed here in Premiere. So if I play this out, come on, everything's slow. There it is. We have that panning going up.
Approaching the final shot.
We're not seeing a lot of it because you can see it's red here. Remember, that means that it needs some time to render out, but we can tell if we scrub slowly that it did work. We're seeing that animated version working here. So that is good. All right, last thing we're going to do here is we're going to make some final changes to this time lapse. So back in Premiere, we noticed that what we used to have here is now replaced with this, in my case, pink version that has this very long name, comp0/poolside AE01, really long file name. That's good. We want to trim the out point of this, so we're going to adjust our timeline playhead to right after Adam, in the interview with Adam Jeff, this file, right after he says approaching. So thinking it's at about the 2:03 mark. I'm going to play it and listen here when he says it.
Like approach.
Okay, so I don't know. I'm going to say 2:03:21 is where I think he says approaching. So this whole clip, we want to shorten it, but we want all the effect of it. We don't want to dump all these frames back here. We just want to make it go faster, speed it up like we've done before. So remember, we have to go back to our tools over here, and we're going to use the rate stretch tool. which is nested in this tool. Looks like this, rate stretch tool. And we're going to grab the tail of this clip and snap it to the playhead. So we're going to go over here, grab this. Come on, work with me. Pull it backwards and snap to the playhead. So what that did is it shortened it up and sped it up. Look how fast that is now. They're flying. So that's what we wanted to do. Let's just go back to our selection tool to make sure we didn't do anything goofy here. Real quick, one more thing before I stop this video. It's a little bit longer. We're going to update a dynamically linked composition. So notice that at the beginning of this clip, I'm going to go here, we see a lot of the boring floor in front of the stage scene. So maybe this isn't the best place to start. Maybe we should start with our view here and keep panning up because we have a lot of room. So because it's dynamically linked to a composition in After Effects, we can switch to After Effects and edit it, and it's going to automatically update here. So let's pop back over to After Effects, and we're going to press the Home key on your keyboard. That takes us back to the start of our playhead. And instead of having our vertical position be at 330, we're going to change it to 557 and hit return. Notice that brought it up quite a bit. We don't have to see quite as much of this dead space, but we still have this much room to pan up. So that's our starting point. We only wanted to change this one keyframe. The ending keyframe is exactly fine where it is. We're happy with that. So we're just going to save this in After Effects. Command S. And we're going to jump back into Premiere. And I saw that flash. It updated. And now when we look at this, it definitely starts up a little bit higher. We're not seeing as much of that dead foreground as we were before. All right. All right. Now in Premiere, in our project panel, notice that we have something called Poolside Edit 03 Linked Comp 01 Poolside a blah blah blah. You guys can read. We have this new thing, this new composition. We want to take this and just to keep things clean, drag it into the graphics bin. So now we have it in the graphics bin, and we're going to save our file, and we're going to move on.